YouTube? Ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call to order this work session Tuesday, April 27th, 2021 at 10 a.m. We're calling to order and Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Christensen, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Regular agenda item 2A, information discussion regarding the licensing process for adult use marijuana, a summary of how other localities are addressing the regulation of marijuana establishments, and to get input from the board to guide the community development department in any appropriate changes in the zoning ordinance. We have Randy Plummer and Homero Villa. Good morning, Randy.
Morning, Chairman, Supervisors. We have this exciting subject of adult marijuana today. As you remember, this started basically in 2010, Prop 203 that started the medical marijuana. And the voting was 50.1% against 49.9%, but it did pass. And then in November of 2020, we had Prop 207 that was 53-47, and that was for Gila County here. So I will tell you roughly, I've heard words that went through all the precincts. Basically, above the dam was around 60-40, and below the dam was 60-40 for and against. So the area is pretty divided. I will tell you it's still against federal law. So before we get going, it is still against federal law, just the state says it's okay. So it starts off, basically what the law is allowing is anyone over 21 can have 1 ounce and not more than 5 grams of concentrate, which is basically the oils and stuff that they squeeze out of it and make it a little bit more potent. It allows individual houses to use, if you're over 21, you can have 6 plants. If you're 2 people living in a house, you can have 12 plants. I will say they're supposed to be grown in a closet under lock and key. There's no way to regulate that, but that is part of the law that says it's supposed to be under lock and key and inside. We've already talked about this, that this could be an enforcement issue that will be dealt with the sheriff. You know, if someone tries to grow it outside, that is against the law, and that's going to be a sheriff way to have to deal with that. It allows for, if there's a medical dispensary, they can get a dual license. Basically, they can do the medical and the recreational. Remember, medical, there is no age difference. If you get a prescription, you can have it. At least until it is 21. One of the interesting key points of this is if you have had a conviction or adjudication of marijuana, come July 12th, you can ask to have your record expunged. There's a lot of restrictions in that, but basically if you got caught having it and there was no other violence or crimes with it, you can ask to have it expunged from your record. A couple of definitions: the establishment, the business. The dual license is what I talked about with the medical and the recreational. Early applicants, I'm sure if you read in the paper, there were 327 applicants. All of them had to submit $25,000 non-refundable application fees, and they were giving out 26 licenses. So this is big business. The newspaper article basically says if you get a license and you take it to Phoenix, it's worth roughly $20 million. Who says that? Who gets that money? Is up in the air. But that's what they're saying it's for. And then they have the social equity ownership program. And basically, the way I kind of understand that is if you have an area has a lot of issues with with marijuana, they basically allow them to have an extra license or a possibility of a license in that area to help, because now it's legal. So it's kind of a interesting part of the law, but they got put in there. And remember, this is just a quick synopsis of all this. The parts it does not allow is the health department is responsible for enforcing all of this good stuff, the inspections and everything else. They basically can get a license for every 10 pharmacies that the county would have. That's also, there's regulations for areas and how many can be in the county and so on and so on. But that's one of the things they use for it. Not more than 2 licenses per the county for non-recreation or non-registered, non-profit medical. And that's basically the medical marijuana. There's supposed to be a non-profit distribution center for that. Take that how you want it, Now the problem is on they say March 19th, or January 19th to March 9th, they were allowed to submit, and that's where those 327 applicants went in. Just last week, they gave out those first licenses on April 19th, and Gila County got 2. One is in Globe, and one is in Payson. Payson one is where the medical was and is. They had shut down for a couple of months. No one really knows why. They didn't tell anyone, but it was the same company that was shut down. The medical now is reopened their medical and got a dual license. And then there's one on Globe on Broad Street that got a new license. So those are the 2 that just came out last week. Lost my spot here. There's also 26 licenses still available after they figure this all out. They're still working on all the rules. State's still involved. They've got to figure out things, see what happens with the license they have out there. All this comes into play, and they still have 26 that they can give out. So we may not be done, is what I'm saying. So the county may, in regards to marijuana establishments, enact reasonable regulations. The problem with that is who thinks what reasonable is different between everyone. We can limit the number of facilities. We can outright deny them. We can, except for the dual license, you cannot regulate those. We can regulate time of operations. We can regulate signage and how they deliver it. Problem is enforcing that. And as I've talked with our county attorney, currently our medical is 8 to 5. Well, someone may think for recreational that's too restrictive. It's 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. They may want to buy it on Saturday and Sunday, and they may want to buy it until 2 o'clock in the morning, so on and so on. So they may consider that too restrictive, and that's one of the things that it says not to be doing here. We can restrict pretty much everything. We basically got 3 options that I'll get to at the end of this when we get down to it. We allowed in medical in M1 zoning. Sorry. M1 industrial zoning. We have roughly 28 parcels in the county that allow that use. Most of them are more in the globe side, but there was a point that we had none in the county, and that has just changed. That was the one that closed down in Payson, so that made it none. The one in Globe had moved to Phoenix, worth more money there. So for a while there, we had none, and now we have the two are back. So there can be more medical that's allowed, and restricting the medical is a lot harder to deal with, because it's basically a pharmacy telling people they can't have medication in a location where they think that that's legit is a very tough thing to get involved with. So we really can't restrict the medical. I will also tell you, we're dealing this currently with zoning, and this is going through zoning. Problem is, we have a part of the county that is unzoned, so, which is young. So we can't control through zoning a dispensary or retail establishment there. If the state gives them a license, state gives them a license. So dealing the way we're dealing with this through medical, we truly cannot stop it in young. We can make it harder, but they're unzoned. So the ordinance is dealing with this as a zoning ordinance. So I will tell you, the City of Globe has approved it, and their restrictions are, 500 feet to a school, 250 feet from churches, 100 feet here. They wanted it. They really were looking forward to it, where they were a little bit more enthusiastic than a lot of the other jurisdictions that I talked with, but they allow it. Payson has denied it. It's currently downtown. It's by the moving areas over on Tano Street, but they have prohibited it. Star Valley has prohibited it. As you can see, Globe embraced it. Payson prohibited it. And then there's a few others that go through here: Coconino, Navajo, Yavapai was one of the bigger ones. They denied it. A lot of the jurisdictions try to make it like medical, but they don't have unzoned areas. So we have a little bit added discrepancies that go along with that. Well, the reason a lot of the jurisdictions want this is tax revenue. It's supposed to help schools. It's supposed to help. They're expecting $88 million in taxes added because of the new adult distribution. Those are numbers that someone came up in the newspaper. We have no way of verifying those. But it's a pretty substantial amount of money that can come into the state. So here we're going to get down to the nitty gritty here. We have basically three options. We can embrace it, allow it in a lot of places, and move forward. We would write a new ordinance for that and change the zoning ordinance and deal with everything that you guys want. We can prohibit it and just say we're not going to allow it. We also are allowed, and that is in the law, that we can prohibit it. There was talk of, do we allow it to match medical? But then in talking with our attorney, the medical gets into, it's fairly restrictive. Like I said, the 8 to 5 and the locations and everything that goes along with that. So we can open ourselves up to being sued because it's too restrictive. And, you know, until you get into court, you really don't know how it's going to work out. So that's really what we're down to. And if we want to prohibit it, we probably need to write a standalone ordinance, because if we want to include young. Like I said, if we just make the changes to prohibit it in the zoning ordinance, that still does not address young, if young wants to be addressed. The real fact is, I don't know that there's enough people there that someone would want to spend the money to get the license and develop all that infrastructure that they need and everything else. Is there enough cells there to make it worthwhile? Are we worrying about something that doesn't need to be worried about? That's the decision and direction that we'd be looking for you guys to tell us where you'd like to go. So I'm here to answer questions. I ran through that pretty quickly. This is going to affect us. There's going to be licenses and people wanting to come here.
Thank you, Randy. Supervisor Christensen, questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I do. I think I have questions. So we have it within our purview to deny the recreational use of marijuana,
Correct.
but not the medical.
Correct.
Okay. And to protect young, and I don't know that situation entirely, parts of it are not zoned. We could zone those parts.
No. We could write a separate ordinance that includes young. It would not be a zoning ordinance.
I see. So to prohibit would be more powerful than a zoning issue.
It would be easier to defend, prohibit it, than to allow it.
And if we do prohibit it, it would be countywide, including Globe, which embraces it.
Unincorporated area of the county, yes. We don't get to control what Globe
City Council.
does, because
I see.
they're incorporated.
I see. Okay, that's clearer now. So, okay. Okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thanks, Randy.
Sure.
Supervisor Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Randy, and on page 8 down there, it says additional marijuana establishment license is issued through the social equity program. What is the social equity program? Start with.
That is, like I said, I'm not great at explaining it. Jeff might be better at this than I. That's basically where they feel that an area has been over prosecuted for marijuana, that they think by helping bring that back to whole by allowing a license to go in that area.
And who's they? Is that the Arizona Department of Health Services, ADHS?
Yes.
Okay. And so right now in your presentation, there can only be, if I have this correctly, one establishment per 10 pharmacies, right?
Or 2 per county,
Or 2 per county.
and then the 26 that are still being decided, or how they're going to decide that, so we can get another one.
So we could have up to 3.
Correct.
Okay.
Chair,
And
Okay. Oh, just a
if I
second.
could clarify this social equity program, it's a, before you go any further, just so everybody understands where that is. With that, I read an article written by the Arizona Civil Liberties Union, which is pretty clearly where this came from. And the article basically says that nationwide, there's been a disproportionate enforcement of the prior marijuana law in every state, where minorities have been overly prosecuted for marijuana offenses. And they advocate in this article that to correct that, past abuse, there be an increased number of opportunities for people to buy legal marijuana in areas where they've been prosecuted more disproportionately. So that theory has gone right into the statute. The statute provides that the department shall issue 26 additional retail marijuana establishments. They shall be given and placed in areas that have a disproportionate impact of prior prosecutorial enforcement. In other words, areas of the state that have had a larger number of prosecutions for violating the marijuana law in the past will be getting extra stores for legal marijuana to make up, apparently, for prior enforcement. That's the theory behind it. So the department will then talk to our county attorney, ask him which areas of our county have had disproportionate enforcement of prior marijuana violations. And he said that would be Central Heights and Miami. So when the rules haven't even been written yet. I talked to an attorney for the Arizona Department of Health Services, and they have to write the regulations on how they're going to implement this part of the statute, which hasn't been done yet. When they figure that out, the best we can do at this time is merely, with all the intelligence we have, try to figure out what that's going to mean in the future. The best guess would be that they will look around the state, and they'll figure out 26 areas they think had heavy prior enforcement of the marijuana law, and they will make available to those communities an additional retail store. And if they choose Gila County to receive one of those, then the likely areas they will look at would be Central Heights and Miami to get those extra stores. But they wouldn't be able to locate one of those licenses in a city, town, or county that had prohibited solely standalone marijuana establishments. They'd have to go into a city, town, or county that was already permitting it and then regulating it. So that's what the social equity license is.
So, Jeff, with that, one of the parts of Randy's presentation also talked about 35 miles apart. So, say you got one on Broad Street in Globe, you couldn't have another one in Miami or Central Heights, right?
Now, that 35-mile limitation is a limitation only in the county's zoning ordinance for medical. That doesn't apply to
Okay.
Globe.
Yeah, that 35 miles is addressing the medical that is in our current ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing about recreational at this point.
Currently, as Randy said, we have 2 licenses, and that's the maximum we can have under the statute for recreational marijuana because we're limited, but the department is limited to issuing no more than one, the way they're interpreting it is no more than one additional recreational license to a county that already has one medical dispensary. So since we have one medical dispensary, we can only get one standalone recreational license, which has been issued in Globe. Now, the Payson Medical Pharmacy is able to get a second one, become what they call a dual licensee. As Randy indicated a couple of times, we can't do anything about that. So we have a maximum already. That's it. Could get one of those social equity licenses. That is, it'd have to go into an area that already allows standalone recreational stores. Could go in Globe or some other city or town that is permitting those.
So then that goes back to the M1 zoning, the 28 parcels that we have that's in M1 zoning.
And that's for medical.
That's for medical.
That is right, correct. In our ordinance that we have today is only
medical.
addressing medical. And if we go in and try to address recreational through the zoning ordinance, we could add things in there too, but it's very speculative of what someone's going to determine is over enforcement. You know, they think it should be like alcohol. We've talked about that. Should they be able to get it until 2 a.m? You know, type thing, and that's not restrictive then, or is that still restrictive? I mean, there's all kinds of what ifs that can come with all this.
Okay, thank you, Randy. I know I'm going to have a lot more questions. You know, as far as Young goes and being outside of zoning, Pleasant Valley kind of likes that right now. And so I'm not real sure what way, you know.
We would basically have to just write a whole standalone ordinance that has nothing to do with zoning. Mm-hmm. If we wanted.
Young, but as a county, we ended up putting them in the rest of the county. How would that work?
I didn't.
So if Young says no, you know, we're not zoned, it's open, but Pleasant Valley says no, we don't want any recreational marijuana facilities in Young. But the rest of the county does.
I would have to refer that to the. I'd have to refer that to the attorney. Would we be allowed to enforce in one area and not the other area?
So if I may try to understand the question. So you're saying if the board decided to regulate the recreational sale of marijuana throughout the county, but at the same time wanted to prohibit it in Young because the constituents there didn't want a recreational store, the question is that possible?
Yep. It'd be kind of like same thing for Gila too. You know, some of these out-of-the-way places that's unincorporated, you know, what if they don't want it in their communities?
They don't want to but the question would be, is there a legal way to regulate it, permit it within the unincorporated, but at the same time, areas of
Right.
the county? And, you know, I'll continue to think about it after I give you this off-the-cuff answer, but I don't think that's possible. That's the reason that some areas need to get together and incorporate so they can have their own mayor and council and make their own regulations for their area. I don't see how you could do that. If there's only one unincorporated area of the county, and the regulation that you choose or the prohibition is going to apply countywide. And you couldn't isolate one area and exclude it from how would you even draw the boundary around that area, for example? What is Young? Is it just the central part of Young, or is it a very large area that goes out 15 miles from the center of?
Well, you know,
that's why you have to incorporate to
right. I'm sure those people up there could draw some lines for you. There's no doubt. It might come to the outskirts of Star Valley, but you know what I'm saying? I'm just throwing that out there because I could possibly see some areas that says, I don't care what the county wants, we're not having it here. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to throw that out to see what you would say.
I'm seeing it as there's only one unincorporated area of the county, and that includes all of it. Anything that's unincorporated is county, and it's subject to the Board of Supervisors legislation on what's going to happen in the unincorporated area. That includes them, whatever.
Thank you. I'll have more for you later, Randy.
No problem, sir.
Yeah, I have questions and comments and things, but I also had Homero on there as well. Homero, were you going to present today or no? I had you both, and I just wanted to be sure that everybody had spoke before I open a can of worms.
No, Randy covered all the items. They were on the PowerPoint presentation, and Jeff has offered some comments. We are seeking your input as to whether or not we proceed with either prohibiting or accepting it as we go to what we do with medical marijuana, or writing a different ordinance that regulates medical marijuana that Supervisor Klein just offered. Could be an ordinance with zoning and an ordinance without zoning. So that's those are the things that we're taking back at this point.
Yeah, thank you. I just had both of you presenting, so I wanted to be sure that there wasn't anything else coming.
He was making sure I didn't screw up. So.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just making sure we didn't have anything else coming. The thing of it is I got mixed deals here when you talked about Payson. You said they prohibited it. wait, except for a dual license. So how do you say yes and no in the same situation? I mean, prohibited is no, you can't. But yes, you can. Okay, so that's a yes, you can.
Right, they have a specific, they did add the dual license. That's the only way that happened.
Okay, so it's not prohibited. It is okay in the town of Payson. They have provisions, but it is okay. And it is okay in the city of Globe.
Yes.
Okay, so so where I'm at is prohibited, not allowing it. And so if you're allowing it in any way, shape, or form, then you are allowing it. And so kind of where I'm at is with the voters, if they voted for it, and the cities and towns are for it, I kind of where I'm at is the can of worms for staff to write whole new ordinances, because that's going to include a lot of attorney work, because we're going to have repercussions on things. So kind of where I'm at is the world's already spoken. What's the best direction from staff and our attorneys? I guess it's
If I may, Mr.
You may.
Chair, try to clarify. This is a little confusing, but this is what the statute says. This is ARS 362857. Says a locality may, and I'll back up here, a locality is defined as a city, a town, or a county. So we could say a county may prohibit marijuana establishments. So a county may prohibit. What is a marijuana establishment? Another way of saying that is a purely standalone retail store. Counties can prohibit that. So can Payson, and Payson did. But then it goes on to the next paragraph and says a county may not enact an ordinance that makes, I'm going to find the exact words here. Prohibit, restricts or interferes with the ability of a dual licensee to become a dual licensee. So, in other words, the city of Payson was given authority, and I should back up here another step. You said the voters have spoken. Well, part of what has been enacted is not only the legal use for adults of marijuana under certain circumstances, but also counties having the authority to prohibit. Another thing that's been enacted. It's the law. It's kind of rare sometimes. Counties are actually given authority to do something. Said, hey, you can prohibit this if you want to, but what you can't do is prohibit a purely medical dispensary from also becoming a recreational store. So when Payson prohibited it, they did all they could do. They said, you can't have a recreational store in Payson. They couldn't prohibit the medical dispensary from getting one. The law didn't allow them to do it, but they prohibited everything that they could. The county has the same opportunity, except with the county is different because the county has no medical dispensary and may never have one. I talked to the attorney for the Arizona Department of Health Services, and he explained that there currently are 4 counties that don't have any medical marijuana dispensaries. And when they get through these recreational licenses, they're going to make sure that every county has at least one. We have one. And they're not going to, it's just doubtful. There'll be another one located in Gila County. It's too small. And if it does, it's doubtful it's going to locate outside of a city. Got to make some money. So, the county may never have this problem of having a medical dispensary in the unincorporated area, which would automatically be able to get a recreational license also, like Payson had that problem. So it couldn't prohibit it altogether. And so that's that's the situation. That's why, just want to make sure it's really clear because it's a little confusing. Counties do have the authority under the statute to prohibit it. Prohibit what? Prohibit purely standalone recreational stores. You can't prohibit a medical dispensary from getting that recreational license, but there aren't any. So the county could prohibit it, any recreational stores in the county, unless that happens. I'm not sure if I want to make sure when you were speaking, I thought, well, I need to clarify to make sure you understand what the law is. I tried to do that a couple of times, but sometimes the law is confusing enough that that's not enough. Any questions about that? That's the status. You can prohibit it. Oh, yeah, and it's, in my mind, it's easier to prohibit from a legal perspective than to regulate. Because if you, for example, say, well, we're going to regulate it. We're going to prohibit recreational stores in the county, but we'll do like Globe, we're going to regulate it. They can only be open from 8 to 5. It can't be closer than 1,500 feet to a church or a school or daycare center. Those kind of things. Once you begin regulating, there's a specific provision here that says the county can't issue a regulation that's more restrictive than comparable regulations in the marijuana medical area. So we have to do that, but the problem with regulation is people can always litigate regulations. They can say, oh, you say we can't sell later than 5 o'clock and only on weekdays. Well, that's not reasonable for recreational marijuana. We want to be able to buy it on Saturday. And so they're going to sue you, and you're going to litigate that issue. But if you just prohibit it, they can't litigate that. You're permitted to prohibit it. If you prohibit it, it can't be litigated. County decided, we're not having it. There's nothing to litigate. So it's just easier to manage the legalities of a prohibition than a regulation. And that's what Randy was talking about earlier, but it's kind of hard to see what that looks like until you start to, like with liquor, of course, you can sell till 2 o'clock in the morning and you can't open till 10 on Sunday morning. I can see a person would be arguing that we should have the same kind of store hours for recreational marijuana that we do for liquor. And that's what I want. They're going to go to court to try to force that to happen at some point. May not happen, but looks like a reasonable possibility to me to litigate that issue.
Thank you. Clear as mud now.
I say I didn't do a very good job trying to clarify things.
No, I understand the easy button is prohibited, and then you don't have to worry about any regulations or effects thereof.
Exactly.
But
Easier route.
yeah, okay, yeah, the easy button. But Supervisor Klein.
So, has there been any thoughts on, let's say we prohibit this, it becomes prohibited in Gila County. What's the amount of tax revenue we're going to lose if we do this?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that it would have an impact on our revenues, simply because the municipalities have voted whether or not, and the two main locations, Globe and the Payson area, will have dispensaries. So I can't see that it's going to be a big impact. And frankly, my opinion is I haven't done any study, any analysis. I'm not sure that there's going to be a very large impact altogether, because if you can, in each and every single house in Gila County can have 6 to 12 plants, I'm not sure how that's going to impact it, and how the sales would actually be. But as far as if we prohibit it as a county, just in county, I don't believe that we would be impacted financially.
So James, then what you're saying is if we went ahead and agreed to let it happen, we're not going to see a whole lot of finances off of this. All we're going to have is the burden of regulation, is what I'm hearing Jeff say.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, thanks.
Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to express again, prohibiting does seem to be the easier path. And so that would be my viewpoint, if you're needing that. But I'd also like to make maybe a silly comment on this social equity. In theory, any community that had a lot of gun violence arrests could have an additional gun store installed in that community to remedy that social inequity.
Why are we bringing guns into a marijuana discussion is what I'd like to know. We get beat up enough about them. Let's leave them out of this one, please.
Mr. Chair, let me ask you guys, in your travels around in your meetings, has either one of you come up with questions on recreational marijuana or people pushing you to support it or anything?
I have had no, I have no comment because I've not had any people bring it up.
Neither have I. That's what I was asking. How about you, Steve?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. Supervisor Klein mentioned federal law. I brought that up. I wanted to make a comment about that too. The statutes, I can't quote where it was, but I read it this morning, say that no one is required to violate federal law in this statute. And so one area this has come up is with respect to the marijuana kitchens, that around the state, county health departments are not wanting to be responsible for the inspections of marijuana kitchens because the food requirements come under federal law, and they're not going to be able to approve them because they're processing marijuana, which violates federal law. So it puts the county health department in a bad position to have to go in and inspect a marijuana kitchen for compliance when they violate federal law and be expected to issue some sort of compliance. The other problem with it is if there's contaminated food, marijuana products, it can't simply be disposed of outside in the dumpster like regular food because there's a value associated with that, and they have to figure out what to do with it, and the county health officials don't want to be responsible for that and involved in that. This came up in one of our civil deputies meetings.
So, yes, go ahead, James.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. At the beginning, Randy, you said that in Gila County, the recreational marijuana was approved 53% yes, 47% no. And then you said in Payson was a 60-40 split, and you didn't say whether that was for or against. And in the southern area, it was a 60-40% in favor of recreational marijuana. What was that?
So the 60-40 in pacing was against.
Was against.
And those are rough number for that. But and like Jeff said, though, the 53% voted. They did vote for use, and they voted that it could be prohibited. It was the same law. So some could have voted for it saying prohibit it so that it didn't, we don't know. But both those options are in the law. So as you can see, this is a tangled web that goes a lot of different ways. It affects health. It affects everything else. So
Well, yeah, because the thing of it is okay, prohibit it except for licensed medical suppliers. So that leaves Gila County with two, Payson and Globe. As a business person, you just have a business in Payson and a business in Globe. You have no competition. Then what do you have? So it's a difficult situation to have to be able to try and regulate, because if you don't regulate it, then you have two businesses to perform however within the law, right, but no competition whatsoever. So you wonder in the future what kind what kind of animal that would create without competition, because that's kind of what regulates businesses is their competition. So you take away all their competition, then, what are you going to end up with? So, yeah, it's an interesting situation, and ordinances would be necessary if it wasn't prohibited. So that would create a lot of work on staff. I guess a question, is there a time limit with the state on beings that, okay, it was voted in, if it is legal, is there a state ordinance on when we would need regulations or need to have something in writing at a certain time with the legalization of marijuana?
I do want to go back and correct one thing. An ordinance is going to be required either way we go.
Okay.
So it's not just if we prohibit it or if we allow it. An ordinance is, if we want to include young, it's going to be a standalone ordinance either way. If we want to just deal with it through zoning and young's on their own, then we're going to have to modify the zoning ordinance. So either way, an ordinance is going to be involved and have to be written to cover us. So I just want to make sure I said that correctly.
Okay, then is there a timeline on when we need an ordinance in place?
That sounds like a legal question. And I'll tell you, the best I know, it would work like this. Let's suppose somebody in Young wanted to apply for a recreational license. They would have to fill out an application with the Arizona Department of Health Services. Part of that application, they have to state on there, there's no local prohibition for them having a recreational license. They have to affirm that. You submit that, and suppose they get the license. They issue the license to them. They would then have to get a certificate to operate from the state. And the state isn't going to issue them the certificate to operate until they get some kind of confirmation from the local authority that they can operate. So they would go to the Gila County Community Development Department looking for that so they could submit it to the state. And if by that point in time there'd been some sort of county ordinance either regulating it or prohibiting it, then the Community Development Department could respond and either give them that assurance that they need for the certificate to operate or not give it to them. And so that's the time limit. Some point down the road, if the county hasn't acted and either prohibited it or regulated it, they're going to go in and see Randy and say, I need to get a letter from you saying that I can operate legally a retail store in Young. And if nothing's happened, the board hasn't done anything, he won't know what to do. But if the board has acted by then he will be able to either give them one or give them a letter saying, no, you don't have one. If there's sort of prohibition, then at that point, what happens is the department will tell the applicant and the new licensee, we can't give you a certificate to operate. Then he will have to go to the Superior Court and get a court order overriding the county's ordinance in order to be able to operate. It becomes a court matter, and the department told me through their attorney that they won't get involved in that litigation. They will just simply sit it out, and they'll wait and see who wins, whether the applicant, licensee, or the county. And depending on who prevails at court, they'll either give them or not give them the certificate to operate. So there isn't a bright line in the statute on what date the county has to act by, but it will happen in the course of time when people try to get a certificate to operate. If the county hasn't acted by then, there could be a problem because Randy wouldn't be able to either give them one or not give them one. He'd probably have to just give them one because there's no prohibition. Say, well, the county's never acted to either prohibit or regulate it, so I guess I just have to give the state notification that there's no reason why they can't operate, so they can operate. It's not an answer with a definite date, but that's the best I can do about it.
And I'll be on vacation that day.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine, because there for a while you were getting prohibiting it until your last comments that, no, probably just give it to them because there's no regulation, because there for a while it looked like, okay, that's the way to do it. Just don't do anything and nothing happens. But anyway, that's not going to happen. But okay, moving forward, Supervisor Klein, are you good, or you have a question or comment again?
You know, after listening to all this go round and round, it seems to me like Globe and Payson's going to have a facility. More than likely, or Globe. Well, Globe and Payson too, because of the dual license. So, by allowing it something to go on in anywhere else, the unincorporated parts of the county, all we're doing is getting a big headache for nothing. That's what it seems to me. So, I mean, that seems to be in a nutshell. You know, if it was, well, we all have our thoughts, obviously, and money ain't everything, but when all you're going to do is acquire a hassle for enforcement and regulations, and there isn't going to be any return off of it.
And I would want to say also, we cannot prohibit the 6 plants
Right.
that everyone can have.
Right.
So if they truly want items,
That's 6 plants. That's not 6 acres, right?
that is correct.
Okay. Just clarifying something. Us and Young have a different way of looking at things. So anyway,
Locked closet.
I just throw that out.
Okay, well, good. Supervisor Christian.
I would like to see this come up on an agenda item pretty soon.
And I
Okay.
would say that if we come back with an ordinance either way, it is not overnight that ordinance, it goes through P&Z board, they,
Sure.
there's a lot of steps into
Oh,
it.
yeah, staff has got their hands full, for sure. Randy, thank you very much for your time today and input and interest in dealing with this, and I'm sure you're glad you're head of zoning at this point in time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one quick clarification. A request to bring this back to the board to actually put an ordinance in place, whatever it might be. I considered from the comments that it would be a non-planning and zoning ordinance, that zoning which has limitations as to the area it applies to. Any
So, you guys,
Supervisor Klein, go ahead.
thank you. So you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but if we prohibit it in the rest of the county, the unincorporated areas of the county, that's a done deal, right? I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with ordinances. It doesn't have anything to do with Pleasant Valley. It's unincorporated. It's covered. Is that the way am I getting that right?
If we prohibit it through zoning, then that does not cover the Young area.
But if we prohibit it county-wide unincorporated
Under a
areas,
separate ordinance, then that would cover that, yes.
isn't that the simplest way of doing it?
That is my understanding through the attorney, yes.
Okay, yes, Homero, go ahead.
Chairman and Supervisor Klein, one of the ideas that we need to explore with our county attorney is just that, to bring in front of the board a board item that says use dispensaries in all the unincorporated areas of Gila County, period. And if it's possible to do that, we do it with one vote and we're done. And working with the county attorney, that's not possible, and we have to bring two ordinances to you. We will do that. But I think we just need to spend a few minutes to determine if we can do it with one board action.
Good. It was my understanding that we can't prevent it from a medical marijuana supplier.
Right, so you might need, they have to think it through, need both an ordinance that says it's prohibited countywide. However, with regard to medical dispensaries, if one should ever get a recreational license, we'd need to regulate that. And that'd be through zone. It's a little complicated to figure out how we would, it's a very unlikely thing that there would ever be a medical dispensary in the unincorporated area of Gila County. It's just probably not going to happen in my lifetime.
Right,
if
there's
it
too much
did,
money involved for them to set up in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, well, with the one that was in Globe moved to Phoenix because there was more money available for them down there, so they left, and that's why Globe doesn't have a medical dispensary anymore. They just found greener pastures. So it just seems very unlikely that one would ever locate in rural Healy County. There's just not enough money for them to do that. But if that happened, would we want to have some sort of regulations in place? We probably, like Homer said, we probably want to take a look at the whole legal landscape, make sure that the county's on that if that were to happen.
You know,
Okay, go ahead, Supervisor.
Mr.
Quinn.
Chair, thanks. You know, and I hear what you're saying, Jeff, but I tell you, the demographics in a lot of these rural areas are changing. And the growth is coming on. And so I think about anything could happen in the next few years in a lot of these areas that we wouldn't normally think would be an issue. And, you know, and I'll tell you, you know, going back to Young, I know that there's been once or twice already from a marijuana standpoint that they've tried to come in there. And so, ruling anything out, I think it's up to you guys to explore the best way to go. I mean, just see.
Well, that's true. A few years ago, someone wanted to put a medical dispensary in Young, and Bob Gould, the then director, approached me about it because he was dealing with that issue, and it never happened, but there was an inquiry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so anything could happen.
Okay,
Mr.
staff
Chairman?
is good? Supervisor?
Mr. Chairman, one
Yeah,
question.
James, go ahead.
I'm sorry, clarification. Since we cannot, this is a work session, board supervisors can't vote. We've had a discussion, got to feelings and stuff. Do we need to, from attorney's point of view, do we need to bring it, when we bring it back to the board as requested by Supervisor Christensen, that, does it need to be a prohibited across the board, and then also an ordinance that potentially would allow certain things? Or do we just at this point, we just, as staff, make a recommendation of what that should include?
That latter sounded like a good approach. If the staff, in conjunction with the county attorney's help, we take a look at what ordinance or ordinances look like they will accomplish what the board seems to want here today, then we can move from there. Of course, the board's not taking a vote, so we don't know, but we have a pretty good indication of what we need to do legally, and we could try to put that together and then present it to the board.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was looking for. If everybody's good, I'm moving on.
Okay.
Okay, we've beat on this enough. You guys fine with that? Okay, good. I'm sure Marion is. Everybody's going to get tired. Okay, moving on to 2B, information discussion regarding the powers and duties, financial responsibilities, open meeting law restrictions, and decision-making processes of the Gila County Board of Supervisors. Maybe we should. No, I'm kidding. Okay. James Minlove, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Wait,
board.
could you hold that up? That looked pretty thick that you had there. Holy yeah, do we need to take a break before we get into that 4-inch book of pamphlet there?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
We've been here an hour. Were we looking at an hour and a half or two, or what are we?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because when I saw that, I thought, we may need to take 5 years. Okay. Good morning, and we will proceed as long as we're not doing that whole pamphlet.
I hope we're not. This could be another can of worms, and so
Well,
I
we
don't
may
know
need
if
a timeout
this
if
one
you
first
do.
or the other one first. They're both cans of worms, or can be. Mr. Chairman, with the addition of Supervisor Christensen, I have neglected to make sure that we have a chance to, as a Board of Supervisors, discuss what we can and cannot do as the Board of Supervisors. As you probably, as two sitting supervisors, have found out, that counties are very limited on what we can actually do. Cities and towns, municipalities, they have an option for city rule, that they can, home rule, that they can establish laws or rules that they govern themselves, whereas by the Constitution and statute, counties can only do what is expressly given us as powers and authority by the state. So unless it says in statute or the Constitution that says you can do this, by anything that's silent, we are not able to do anything where there's not an authority granted. So one of the Mrs. Grice, she's the keeper of the County Supervisor Handbook, or the County Supervisor Torah, or whatever we want to call it. But there's one of the main things that we have is open meeting laws that we, as a Board of Supervisors and as board staff, must be compliant with. Had an interesting experience at another lifetime where there was somebody that was a state senator, back and forth from the state house, state senator, and then became a county supervisor. There was some discussions and things about a budget one year, and the supervisors that had come from the state was very frustrated with the open meeting law requirements, and that when she went back from being a county board of supervisors, went back to the state and tried to change the laws, that counties could do away with open meeting laws, because the way the state Senate, the state legislators work is they get behind closed doors and work their deals and try to get votes by doing this and that, and she was very frustrated that we, as counties, we had the open meeting laws. I think they are good that we have them, that everything that we do is open and transparent. My personal opinion is that it would be good at the state and other levels of government that we have everything open and transparent to the public, who the Board of Supervisors and other elected officials in Gila County represent. So I talked to Mr. Beauchamp, County, doing a presentation discussion about the open meeting laws, and he turned me to Mr. Dalton, says he's our resident expert on open meeting laws, and Mr. Chairman, with your permission, would like to turn some time over to Mr. Dalton to have a discussion on open meeting laws.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton.
He didn't tell me that he turned this over to me. So I'll just, I have the benefit of being able to just tell you what comes to the top of my head, because he didn't. Uh-oh, somebody gave me an outline, so I no longer have that excuse. Closer? How about that? Is that better? Okay. The open and meeting laws are something kind of new, I'm sure, for you as elected officials. Like, we have to do what? And it was new for me. I remember years ago when I was in private practice with a firm, and there was a school district down in the Safford area that had a matter on their agenda for the firing of a janitor. And they did it. They fired the janitor. And then the janitor came to our law firm, and complaining that they hadn't followed the open meeting law, and I didn't know anything about it. I'd done other kinds of work, and my partner, Jerry DeRose, looked at it, and he said, essentially, this is a slam dunk. They violated the open meeting law. And so the case was handed to me, and I began working on it. It was very easy work. They simply made the claim. They had a defense attorney. It was a big firm out of Tucson, DeConcini firm. They contacted me, and their first efforts in contacting me were basically very conciliatory. What do we need to do? And the case was settled very quickly in favor of the janitor. It was nothing much to it. It wasn't the hard fight that I was used to in trying to get a plaintiff's claim granted. It was very easy. And that's the situation with open meeting laws. If they're violated, the remedies can be pretty clear in favor of people who have been affected by that. They clearly are going to have a claim that's going to be granted in their behalf. So the law is weighted in favor of helping those that are not necessarily elected. Even those on appointed boards are supposed to follow the open meeting law as well. The law is in favor of the public knowing what's going on, and if they're violated, then the remedies are going to be easy. And the purpose of that is so that government is conducted in the open and not behind closed doors, like the county manager was explaining that seemed pretty good to a former supervisor from Navajo County, apparently. We get rid of this. We don't do it this way anymore, but that's not what the legislature has set forth and decreed for us. They think government is best done in the open. And so that's the whole gist of it. It's just having it done in the open. So it's protect the public, and maybe at this point it'd be good to just sort of find out, like, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Christensen, do you have questions?
Sure. Of course I do. So I understand the concept, and I understand the reason. Okay, so as the three of us interact with each other, at what level?
That's the only thing that I think comes to my mind, that kind of restriction.
Okay, can I add to that then? So I can't email or have a phone conversation or anything like that. Is it acceptable for me to ask, say, Manager Menlove to that I can express to him vote an agenda item and or something that might be coming up that I'm interested in? Would he be allowed to ask those questions and opinions of the other supervisors to help manage the future conduct of that agenda item?
So here's how I think the county manager, Mr. Menlove, does it. And I think this is the way it's probably done everywhere and is acceptable. He's managing what he believes the board wants done. He knows absolutely what the board wants done when they take a vote on it. They give him clear direction, but sometimes he doesn't know. And so in order to get that direction, he'll visit with each something, an issue, and find out what the board probably is going to do so he can better be doing his work. But he can't, and that's fine, he can do that, talk to each of you individually. He wouldn't be able to go to Chairman Humphrey and say, I've already talked to Supervisor Christensen and Supervisor Klein, and they're in favor of this. How do you feel? He can't do that. But he can hold his cards to his vest, so to speak. He knows what the other two supervisors think about something, but he's not going to disclose that to the chairman when he talks to him. He's going to find out what his, and he's trying to chart a course of conduct. He knows basically what the vote's going to be when it finally comes up. He doesn't know for sure, but he has a pretty good idea, and he'll begin doing his managing work based on that. So he can visit with you individually as long as he's not sort of becoming a messenger and serially creating a meeting by transferring what each one of you have said to the other one, and then basically is a meeting that he's just becoming an agent to facilitate a meeting, but he's not doing that. He's keeping that separate. So is that an accurate way of describing what county managers typically do?
Yes. Discussions like we've had this morning in a work session, discussions so that we kind of can glean from each of you of what's your position or feeling about certain things that you as a board will set as policy, but can't do polling of this is what's coming on the agenda, how are you going to vote? And certainly can't go from supervisor to supervisor and say that Supervisor Klein is going to vote this way, so Supervisor Humphrey, you need to vote this way, or something. That's what is unallowed. But it is the conversations, as Mr. Dalton has specified, that I can have with each of you to get essentially what we've had today in a work session about recreational marijuana.
And as a deputy county attorney, sometimes I wonder what the board wants to do on something. So I'll call the county manager and ask him, well, there's this water district out there that's having trouble. And do you think the board would want to exercise this option and get involved with this water district and try to straighten things out? What's your thoughts on that? Because I've got an opposing attorney who's sending me letters and wanting me to do something, and I can look at the statutes and see the board has options, but I don't know what the board wants to do, and there's no way for me to talk to the board either. So I can't call each board member up. I guess I could call each one of you up and talk to you individually and not disclose anything and so forth, but I don't do that. That's the county manager's job. So I call the county manager and, what do you think about this? And he'll say, well, I think they'll probably want to do this. Or he'll say, I don't know, I'll find out and I'll get back to you. And then he may come to each of you and sound you out and kind of get a sense for what you're thinking about these domestic water improvement districts and your feelings about issues that come up with them and whether you want to get involved or you don't in this particular situation and so forth. And then he'll let me know, and then it kind of gives me some direction of what I'm doing with an opposing attorney who wants something done. So that's sort of the loop from my perspective, what I'm working on to kind of get some direction from the board. And then it may never come to you as an official board action, or it might come later. And then we'll find out for sure what the board thinks. And hopefully we were guessing along the way what the board's action would have been. If we guessed wrong, then we will abide by the direction we get. And the board takes action.
Okay, I have another one. I don't want to take all the time, though, but anyway, I'm learning, and this is a complicated thing, even though I understand the spirit of the law and the letter of it. So we have an agenda item. We're going to vote on it. We have a presenter. The presenter makes presentation. We have questions. Through those questions, quite often we will reveal our feelings on how we're going to vote. Is that allowable? It therefore signals the others that I like what you're doing. It's a good deal. This is a great thing for the county. Thank you for your presentation.
So you're talking about in a meeting where you're about to vote on that
We're about
issue?
to vote on it, and I reveal through my questioning or comments the way I'm going to vote.
So I would think that's absolutely the time, and I think you, in an open meeting, and you're considering it right then to vote on it. Now's the time when you can
Okay.
say what you can turn to each of the other supervisors and say, "This is what I'm thinking so far," and but I'd like you to talk me out of it if you think I'm going in the right direction. But let me tell you my reasoning, and this is where I'm going, and this is how I'm going to vote, unless somebody can persuade me otherwise.
Okay.
And then everybody, and this is the time when you're sort of having that open deliberation, and everybody gets to hear what you're thinking, your reasoning, why you're doing what you're doing, and then it comes to a vote. And that's the open government that the open meeting laws were intended to set everything up so that, wham, now you're having the meeting, and now everybody gets to hear what's going on in each of your minds and how you affect each other, persuade each other, and then what the vote is.
Okay, that's really helpful because I kind of thought that wasn't allowed, but that's very helpful. So one last one. So we all have assistants that we speak with and talk to, and they have an idea of what we're thinking about things coming up. Are they allowed to converse with themselves amongst each other and share that information, or is that?
Okay, so the question is, so you all have assistants, and they may think they know what you're going to do as far as voting on something.
Mm-hmm.
So can they go talk to each other? They're having lunch, and can they discuss an upcoming vote on something, and what do they think? So I guess for the purpose of the questions, I would assume that the assistants think they know, but they don't really know how you're going to vote on
Okay.
something. And then and they're each like that. And when they have lunch together and they discuss things, they can talk about anything they want to. They're not the board, and they're not taking a vote, and they're not restricted in their conversations with each other.
Okay, that's been very helpful. Thank you. That's all I have.
Supervisor Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, James and Jeff, for this presentation, because this is a good one. You know, for the first term and getting your feet on the ground and everything. I've learned a lot. I've learned that the open meeting law is the biggest pain in my tail that there ever was. And it's tough because, you know, one of the things I've had questions with, and this is one of my questions, is when we're posted for today for all of us to be here, you know, this is the day of our meetings and here, that posting, does it just solely cover the time we're sitting here at this dais, or is that for today? So, and that goes beyond just like today. It'd be for anything else if we're posted for an event at the fairgrounds. Is that for the day, or is it just for that particular event? How do you guys interpret that?
Before I answer that, could I go back and add a PS on the question that Supervisor Christensen asked? So what the secretary shouldn't do is, or the assistants, administrative assistants, is when they get done say, well, now we know, now I want you to go tell your supervisor that these other two have decided to do this, become the messenger that creates a meeting, essentially, between the three of you. They're just doing it for you so they can't become that. And that reminds me of the email problem. Years ago, we had the situation where it was a water improvement board in the county, and somebody wanted to sell some property, but they were also a member of the board and wanted to sell it to the board. And they had put that into the email. But the problem was one of the other board members forwarded that to the other board members. So it became a meeting on the internet. We're now all hearing what one of the board members wanted to do, something that would have to have been approved by the board in order to go into effect. So it was a future board action item. It was being communicated by one board member to the rest of the board members. So you have to be careful with your emails. They don't get forwarded around to each other and create meetings.
And I think with our emails, we're blocked. I don't believe I can send an email to these two or vice versa. I think we're just automatically blocked on emails.
This helps you.
I believe so.
Yeah, just
Text
because
or
it
the
can
same.
happen kind of with email. You can do things accidentally that you wish you hadn't done.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Fast.
good you haven't tried.
Huh?
That's good you haven't tried.
No, no. Someone told me that back when I came into office. You couldn't anyway. We're blocked. I believe we are. I haven't tried it, but we could try it real quick. You want to try it?
So now, your question was if there's a meeting posted, like one today is posted from, starts at 10, but it doesn't say when it's going to end, right? Just starts at 10. There's certain things on the agenda. We cover those. And so what's the question?
So when we post for a day, basically, I kind of thought it was for the day. Say the ribbon cutting steel in Payson, we're all posted to be up there that day. Is that specific to that particular project? Is that for the full day? How is that interpreted? Or does it depend on how it's wrote?
So that's been posted. You're all going to show up for the ribbon cutting for, what's that for now? Ribbon
The
cutting for-
building up there,
The building?
Payson, yeah.
So you'll all be there. But you aren't going to discuss any business or take any votes on anything. You're just going to be present for the ceremony?
Well, that brings up another question to me. If we're posted and we're public and we can talk, which that always was the impression. I got one attorney shaking her head, but not that you should be talking about how we're going to vote for whatever, but isn't that a time when we can? I can ask Tim, hey, I got an issue in San Carlos. What do you think?
Oh,
You know,
so there's the posting and then there's the agenda items. And what the law provides is if you're going to take a vote on something,
right?
that something has to be sufficiently described in the agenda item that it wouldn't surprise somebody
Right.
that you did it. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to be at a ribbon cutting and there's nothing on the agenda, talk about anything, then you couldn't talk about any business. You couldn't take any action. All you there, I think you don't even have to post that actually. Because if you showed up at that ribbon cutting and you're all there, but nobody conducts any business with each other, there's no agenda items covered, nobody votes on anything, there's no foul. Nothing's happened. Everybody's going to see you're there, and you're going to get criticized if you don't. So you should post it, but if you didn't, nothing bad could happen to you because you're not going to discuss or take votes on anything. So you're not going to get in trouble.
So that's a kudo for us because our calendars always go to Missy, and Missy pays attention to our calendars. And so if me and Steve have got a particular event, we're both showing on our calendars, it's an automatic deal. She posts us for the day.
Oh, well, you have been
Right.
blessed with excellent staff that make sure you do things right. So that's.
So I
I
mean,
saw the
we
email from Marion about posting it. I don't think I ever responded to it, but that was my thought when I saw it was good idea. Post it. Make sure it's posted. If for some reason you hadn't and you were there, well, no bad things can happen to you if you don't take any action and you don't talk about things you shouldn't be talking about, and there's no lawsuits. Then it's like.
well, you know, the problem is, Jeff, is it say we're in an event, we're sitting there waiting for it to start or whatever, you know, we're sitting there and just shooting the breeze. You know, unfortunately, there's always somebody around the corner looking to try and find something that we're doing wrong to bring it up. And then next thing you know, we're writing letters to justify why we were there and what we were talking about and yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's happened. So to me, to post something where there may be one or two of us or all three of us at a I don't know, a dog catcher event or something, you know, I don't have a problem with that. I think rather than worry about, you know, defending it later, we're covered, we're there, we're good. My question is just how do you look at those postings? Because like for today, for Tuesday, whatever, we're all scheduled to be here at this meeting. You know, we're good. Well, that's different. It's a board meeting. But if we're at an event where we're posted for that day, it's for that day, I think, right? Or is it just for the particular time of the event?
Time of the event.
It's for the event, yeah.
Okay. So so what if it was posted for the day?
I think you could post it for the day if you wanted to. I mean, if you wanted to say the supervisors are going to be at, do you post when you go, for example, to the county association meetings, statewide meetings? You post that you're down there?
I think we do, yeah.
Post that and you're there for, it's like all day long for
Yeah.
several days?
Mm-hmm.
It's all posted.
Or to NACO or wherever,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's posted, so it shows the public here where you are and what you're doing. Even there, you couldn't get together and have a little meeting and decide how you're going to vote on future actions.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that. It's not, because it wouldn't be on the agenda for ending those meetings.
Okay, so I've got another question for you. I might have several questions for you, Jeff. So this is good. I thank you for being here. For last 4 years or longer, we've talked about having particular meetings set up with our local mayors. Being able to go in a roundtable discussion where, yeah, you're not talking about anything other than what you've got out there, what they're doing, the problems they're having or we're having or whatever. So let's say I wanted to set up a meeting with some mayors, and one of the mayors is coming from Payson. It's going to involve the northern part of the county, and I invite Steve to be there at that meeting. So of course we would post it. Would Marion have to be there to take meeting minutes on that meeting?
Oh, that's an interesting question. When you have a meeting, similar to that, there's a statutory mandate that the county attorney's office has to, so somebody from our office would have to be there.
Thank God Jessica lives in Payson.
Yeah, so I don't know what we're supposed to do when you go to the county meetings at NACO, because we haven't been going to those, and it's technically a meeting. So, again, it's one of those, well, we're supposed to be there, we weren't, what's the penalty? Well, there's probably no penalty because you didn't conduct any business, and nobody can take any action because no business was conducted, but it does make me wonder, well, how are we going to comply with that?
Well, but okay, so stop right there a minute. So we're in CSA. We vote for things in CSA. Things will come up and we'll vote as Gila County. It may be the chairman, it may be me, or maybe Steve representing the county that day on there, but something may come up and we will vote on those things.
As a board to bind the county?
You want to explain this one, James?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Klein. Yeah, the CSA, County Supervisors Association, we have 61 supervisors throughout the county. So when we go to the Legislative Policy Summit, which is in the fall, typically October, all 61 supervisors are invited to that. But as that meeting progresses, the purpose is to vote and approve for policy of the County Supervisors Association. As a whole. So all three supervisors, as a part of the 61, will be voting on the policy and direction of the County Supervisors Association as a whole.
And so can I dwell a little bit more on that? So every Friday, right now, especially with the legislative session and going on and the bills coming up, every Friday morning at 9 o'clock, I attend a Zoom meeting with CSA, and we go over the particular bills that are coming through. And I vote every Friday on whether or not Gila County is going to support this bill or not. And I've taken that over since Tommy Martin passed away. She was the one that did it prior to that. And so basically every week at 9 o'clock, I'm sitting in my little office in Young on Zoom, attending these meetings and voting on things like that.
But later, the Gila County Board votes on that bill, or that.
No.
You don't?
No.
It's
You know,
pretty much
county
state
action.
legislation.
yeah.
It's pretty much state
State
legislation.
legislation, so there's no county action involved,
Right.
so,
Yeah, and it probably won't come to the county
Never
unless
gonna
it's
come
an
to the
order
county.
from the state.
yeah. So it's not binding on the county. The state legislature law will be binding on the county, but that's a different issue.
Well, by binding, do you mean that we'll have anything to do with it in the future? Because yes, we will. Most all these bills we'll be dealing with somewhere along the way.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
So to go back to the one I was talking about, like say we want a mayor's meeting, we want to hold a
Yeah,
mayor's
let's go to
meeting,
that one.
and so when we look at something like that, does Marion have to be there to take the minutes, or
The clerk of the Board of Supervisors is is one of 9 county officers. So I would ask her. Does she have
Sorry,
a duty to be
Marion.
there?
Chairman Humphrey and Mr. Dalton, I have always been taught, and I am in the Arizona County Clerks Association, that when there's 2 or more board members and they attend a meeting and they will be discussing and offering input and statements about doing something as a board, that I should be there. And we've had, many years ago, we had joint meetings with, say, city or town council and the board. Their clerk would take the minutes for that city or town, and I would take the minutes for our board. And I believe that would be, that other clerks would be in agreement with that too. Mm-hmm. And just to go back a little further, if I may, as far as what's posted, I've always been taught too that we post for an event that a quorum may attend. And as far as I know, every county clerk does that for every event. In fact, the Maricopa County clerk, she's since retired, but she used to have to go to every event a quorum would attend. And not necessarily, I don't know if she took the meetings, I don't have that. But when the board, the law allows you to publish a notice of a meeting and an agenda. In Gila County, we combine the 2 together, and that's with an agenda and, just like Mr. Dalton said, what would be voted on. But for any other event you attend, I post, Monsieur, I post a notice that a quorum will attend. But it is only for that specific event. It is not for a day.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out something, and
Can I just make an aside here? You know, these records that the clerk maintains are really important. Mm-hmm. And it was really brought home to me. I was doing research on some litigation last fall that had to do with a road up in northern Gila County. And I looked in the archived records of the Arizona Silver Belt for, I think it was 1911, and found a newspaper article in there that said the Board of Supervisors appointed so-and-so, a man named Beluzzi, to be road supervisor over a particular area in northern Gila County the preceding day. So I emailed Ms. Shepard about that. Can you give me the minutes for the Board of Supervisors meeting for, it was like some day in April in 1911. She sends them to me. There they are. They're handwritten, pen and ink, and they're in much the same format as they are today. You know, it shows who's there and the business conducted and the votes. It shows that I can't remember his full name. Beluzzi was appointed road supervisor over a particular area of roads in Gila County. This is 100+ years ago, because those records have been kept for meetings that they need to be kept for, and they've been filed in such a way you can find them. They're there.
they are. And I've learned that over time. You know, everything that Marion does stays with the county forever, and it is really nice to have. Just looking back a few years, you know, we've dug through stuff and they're in there. And so I think it's real important, all of that. You know, I have these questions because, last thing I want to do is write in there one of those letters or pay a fine. So one of the things, Jeff, that I've seen on our neighbors to the south of us is like on today where they have a work session. Work sessions are designed so you can talk. That's one of the places where we can actually sit and I can ask these guys questions. You know, one of the things they do is their work sessions that I've seen 2 examples of them, real broad, you know, about anything on your mind you could talk about. And then they have in there for lunch afterwards, where all 3 of them or whatever goes to lunch at a particular restaurant. And it's all, the addresses are all there. It's all posted. It's all done. So what's your feelings on that? and I guess the reason I'm asking you, Jeff, because there's a lot of times when I understand the reason for the open meeting laws, but the pendulum never swings to the center. It goes from one side or the other. And there's times when it's really nice that we can just sit down and discuss what Mr. Christensen got drawn for hunting season, or what new picture that Tim's working on, or something like that. It isn't necessarily about work. It's just about being normal for a period of time.
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying there's another board somewhere that doesn't list specifically what they're going to talk about. They just have
Everything under the
work
sun.
session, and then they talk about anything they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And can we do that too? That's the question.
Well, I guess my biggest question is I've lived under open meeting laws now going on for 5 years, and I think we've been very well covered on trying to stay out of trouble. And I'll tell you, I'm the biggest challenge these ladies have on that, I'm sure, because I like to talk to people. And so I get it when a law says this is the law. And it apparently all comes down to interpretation, because I'm looking at what the folks in Graham County do, and I'm like, I don't think we can do that. But it's still all part of open meeting laws, you know what I'm saying?
So, I guess the answer to that, sometimes when I sit in these meetings, sometimes you all will talk about things that are not on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask myself, well, is this anything they're ever going to take a vote on, or could take a vote on? And often the answer is no. They're talking about some federal action that's being taken that they don't like, and there's no action that this board is ever going to take on this. They're just expressing their feelings about federal policy. So I don't, raise my hand and say, well, you're off the agenda. I don't do that because I don't like to interrupt you and say things unless I feel I really need to. Is it a violation of open meeting law? Technically, it is. It's not on the agenda. Is there any harmful consequence that would come to you because of it? Very doubtful, because you're not going to take any action on it anyway. So similarly, yes, you should have anything that you're going to talk about on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Stick to your agenda and not talk about things that are not on the agenda. If you don't, is something bad going to happen to you? Perhaps not. So I wouldn't advise you to just, have a work session, agenda item number 1, potpourri. Meeting adjourned. I mean, I couldn't, of course, give anybody legal advice that that's legally acceptable. It's not. You should put it on the agenda. But on the other hand, if you do stray into something that you talk about your hunting season, it's not on the agenda, well, you're not going to get in trouble for that. So you're not going to take a vote on it. It can't be invalidated. You can't pay money damages because of it, that sort of thing. So I guess, you used to play basketball as a kid, and people would do things, and somebody would say, well, no harm, no foul. That was kind of the old saying when I was a kid playing ball. Sometimes you do things that are not exactly countenanced by the statutes, but there's really no harm that's going to come to anyone from it. So, nobody's jumping up and down and saying you're violating the law. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think when it comes to the open meeting laws, all three of us know enough about them to know that we don't want to violate the law. Mm-hmm. But I want to be able to stop in Tim's office on the way down the hall and tell him good morning and see how it's going for him for the day, or whatever, or wheel around the corner and talk to Steve too. Or you meet in a restaurant, on Tuesdays in Globe, there's just so many restaurants, and we will bump into each other occasionally, in a restaurant. That's open meeting laws. We have to abide by them. They are the law. I get that. I understand that. But just to be totally isolated between us three is not a good thing either.
Yeah, I think that it's just your personal discretion on appearance of impropriety.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if if we had an executive session on some issue and the people affected by it were waiting for you out here, and you're back there in James Menilev's office discussing it, and somebody tells a joke, completely unrelated to the executive session, but you all think it's real funny, and you erupt into laughter so loud that people out here can hear it. Well, they're going to think you're laughing about them, and you're going to have some problems because of that. So you're just kind of conducting yourself in a way that maybe is a little more, like you're a real people person, and you have to kind of
Right.
pull yourself in a little bit just to make sure you're not criticized when there's no criticism warranted. You're just trying to make sure you don't get it anyway, so you don't have to deal with it.
So we'll just draft a form letter that I can sign and date every so often when I need it.
Yeah, just,
I'm good, Jeff. Thank you.
yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from. You want to, you're a warm and friendly person, and you don't want to cut that off
No.
from open meeting law. And I'm just,
Well, another thing I'll tell you and I'll tell the world, growing up and coming up through the government, you know, for starters is if there's issues, you sit down and worked it out and got past them. You communicated. That was always taught to us. You communicate, you talk, you get past issues, you work them out, you go on. Coming into the supervisor's position, it's the opposite. The only one I can talk about issues with is James or Kathy, basically, or you. I mean, I could call you or Jessica on the phone, sure, but getting that down to where I just can't pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Tim, what the heck is going on here?" You know, or whatever. That took a while for me to get past that, because that was not the way I was ever taught or brought up coming up through the ranks in the government, you know.
yeah, and of course, the whole idea from open meeting law is that the people whose lives are affected by a decision you don't want them coming here. Supervisor Klein, Supervisor Humphrey, they already decided before they ever got here. They made their minds up, and so there was really no purpose in this meeting because they had all these decisions done. And that's, you don't want that. And
No.
that's the whole thing that open meeting law is designed to prevent the public from having that impression that they can't have a shot at a clean slate, come in and persuade you of their point of view. They may not be successful, but they want to have the feeling that they're getting that, truly getting that opportunity to persuade each supervisor to their point of view in an open meeting, undecided. You've already made your minds up.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I just do not ever want to defend myself in a situation to where there's been supervisors conversing agenda business and everybody's got a phone that's a camera. And I just try to stay out of situations to where I would be with either one of you, whether it's in a restaurant, whether the meeting's posted or not posted, where someone could assume that we are saying something we shouldn't, because then I'm going to have to defend myself. And I like you both, and I'm sure I like you both as people and would like to get to know you, but if I'm standoffish, it's because I don't want to have to defend myself because somebody's got a picture of you and I standing in the parking lot. And then they say, were you there for 10 minutes? Were you there for 2 hours? What were you talking about? It's like, because if someone does that, then I'm going to have to defend myself. And that's just kind of where I'm at with it. Because I'd like to know about a lot of things, but we're not normal. We are board members. And with that comes the burden that you bear with it. And that's just kind of where I have been with it, and try to stay away from the fact that, yeah, there are people out there that could change our lives overnight, and we were talking about elk tags, but how could we prove it unless we had a recording of it, you know? So that's just kind of where I try to stay with it. Mr. Minlove, okay, your stack's gone down. You're welcome back to come to the podium.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, just a couple of things quickly. I think we have about 10 minutes left till noon. Always try to hold our meetings till 2 hours.
Good.
So are you through with questions for me then on open meeting law? I'll just.
For now, I am, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Have a few more copies if anybody would like one. Mr. Chairman, just wanted to, bottom line for the open meeting laws is that the Board of Supervisors establishes policy for Gila County. And anything that you vote on is establishing policy for us. So if there's anything that could be a policy in sometime in the future that there's going to be a vote on policy for the county, that's what is included in open meeting laws. We can, what Ms. Shepherd does is soft post, or Missy posts, soft post certain meetings and things where we might be at lunch or some things like that. One of the things that, as far as elected officials, I really think that being able to get to know each other, not discussing policy with not only just the Board of Supervisors, but with our national representatives, our state legislators, and our local municipal councilmen, that it's all good that we can have that information of what are the issues and things that we can identify, but called together by the Board of Supervisors. So we can work with that and to hopefully accomplish what we need to and desire to. I wanted to just show what we have as a structure for Gila County to identify that in addition to the Board of Supervisors that we have another 7 constitutional officers that consists of the assessor, county attorney, clerk of the court, recorder, sheriff, superintendent of schools, and treasurer. Now, you establish policy for all departments. There is, as a board responsibility in another county that I was not a part of, there came to a point that the treasurer had like a $7 million difference between the bank said you've got this amount and the treasurer's record said you got this amount, and there was $7 million difference. The treasurer was saying they had $7 million more cash. The bank was saying they had less. So that does not look good. So the Board of Supervisors took a vote to suspend the treasurer for 6 months. And so that there can be an investigation done, go in and look at that. End of the story that the treasurer was reinstated, and it was poor record keeping of what it ended up being. And eventually that there's even had to write off $4 million of cash on the county's books for that. So you do have that control. I have seen instances where the presiding judge will issue injunctions to the Board of Supervisors. I've seen them where they say, I've got to have X number of people. We don't have budget for that. We don't have financial capacity. I've seen presiding judges of who Judge Wright is for the county that will issue an injunction that I need this and my people need a raise and stuff. Thankfully, our elected officials in the county work with us, and it's maintaining an open dialogue. Now, the open meeting laws is strictly limited to you as a board. You certainly can go to any other elected official and sit down with them and talk to them, get their feelings, get whatever you want to know of. What is the recorder had a heck of a election last fall, and she might have some opinions and things of what's going on, and you certainly are able to go and discuss those things with the other elected officials and have an open dialogue. My responsibility too to make sure that we are working together, that we are a cohesive group. As a Board of Supervisors, there's a separation between appointed directors and the Board of Supervisors, simply because if we have department heads that have in essence, if a member of the board is going and giving direction to another person in a department director, or whoever it might be, it becomes who's my boss and who's giving the direction. So it's clearly defined here of who their boss is, and going to another department and say, hey, can you do this for me, do that for me, is not appropriate, because it's bypassing, and it can tend to be where staff are being asked to do things that may not be for the public purpose, for the public good. So in the orange here is consists of our admin staff. All of the department directors make up our management team, and then including elected officials is considered a leadership team. We look forward to having meetings. We used to have them with the whole group, so we could have discussions and make sure we're on the page. We look forward, post-COVID, that we can have those meetings and discussions.
Mr. Chair?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So here's the thing, James, and I like talking to the directors. For instance, when I get to Payson, I usually walk up and down Randy's hallway there talking to all of them. There's us three sitting here responsible for basically whatever goes on in the county. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it's a good thing, great. If it's a bad thing, then we need to deal with it. We have to deal with it. You have been real easy to talk to for me. Homero has as well. A lot of times, I still don't get the feel of what the county is like until I go have a meeting with the road crew down here at Public Works. Issues. Mm-hmm. A lot of times I don't know that there is issues until I listen to what the people see, and I come and sit down with you, or I come and sit down with Homero and say, they're kind of talking about this or that. What's the deal? Is there something here? Is there not? When it comes to the management meetings, I think that's a real important group as far as the county goes. And I don't know how I don't feel like, let's say for me, say I wanted to set in on a management meeting, I don't really like doing that because I think there's still people in the county that feel a little bit timid to speak their minds if I'm sitting in the room. You know what I'm saying? I've actually sat down with people before and had discussions. One of it last time was with a couple of Randy's folks. We were talking about their wages. And finally, those ladies sat back there in their chair and they said, "Can we be frank?" And I said, "Hell yes, you can. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm asking." I don't know if people have quite got the gist from me yet that when I ask a question, I want an answer. I don't want just hear, I want you to tell me what I want to hear. I don't want that. I want guys, give it to me. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times when it comes to management meetings, I sit there and I think, man, these would be cool to listen in on and see what people have to say. But on the other hand, I'm always fearful that maybe they won't speak their mind and be as upfront. Same token, I tell everybody when I'm talking to directors or whoever it is in the county, you got an issue, go through the deal, let me know. We'll talk about it. I'll bring it to James. I'll bring it to Homero. I'll bring it to whoever, Jackie or whatever. We will work with it. And still, there's things that come up that I still have to pry out of people. The one thing I've said all along since I've been here is I would much rather have you every week in here at the courthouse pounding on my desk to get something fixed as for me to have to go dig it out of you. And by digging it out of you, I mean I got 3 constituents somewhere that's just hammering me out of the blue on something that we could have fixed real easily had I known about it. So and it all kind of to me evolves around what you're calling a management meeting with your directors and everybody. Mm-hmm. Information is knowledge. The more you know, the more you can do. Yep. And there's times sitting here on this dais, I get the feeling like I'm not sure I know quite enough. I'm not sure I'm getting the gist of what's coming from the ground level up. I'm not blaming you or Homero or anybody. I'm just saying that's just seems to be the case sometimes. And I've really tried to push the longer I'm here to the fact that the directors or whoever it is know that they have I have an open door policy. I don't mind giving my cell phone numbers out to anybody. I've done it on KMOG radio before. That's where we have a chance to hear more about what's going on at the ground level. And sometimes there's nothing to it. Sometimes it may just be an employee that's disgruntled for whatever reason. Sometimes it might have there might be an issue. And so when it comes to those management meetings, and I applaud you for having those. I think they're good. I just don't know going forward how there could be a way maybe to channel that up from you to us three.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Klein, my philosophy on you as board members that everything is open. All the employees, from a line employee, janitor, whoever it might be, on up to directors, that you can have an open conversation with them to find out what's going on. And employees of the pay really sucks or whatever it might be. Information is what we have to have as a group in order to make the best informed decisions. And so I've seen county managers before that they limit the board of supervisors that they have to go through the county manager to talk to anybody because they want to channel the information and limit the information that you get as a board. I am not part of that at all. I want you to have all the information that you feel is important and necessary and to have those discussions. So, yeah, and as far as myself, getting down to line employees, I need to improve on that tremendously as well to get the feel for the entire county. I deal with department directors and more of the top level and frequently don't get to the line employees where you can get the real best story of what's going on. So, any other questions about that?
Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I really try hard not to direct people to do things because I know that's not my place. But a lot of people do, I think, view my position, this position, as the ultimate, buck stops here. I can't get it done, so you're going to have to help me get it done, sort of a attitude. And I get that, and I understand that. So I kind of careful how I proceed. Now, there's occasions, though, and I want to find out from you whether this is appropriate. There's occasions where I'll have someone call and say, just pick something. I have an issue with my road. There's brush here. There's a problem. The tree fell down, whatever. So instead of calling you, I may call Brent Klein, or I may call Steve Sanders and say, somebody called me on this. I'm just letting you know.
Okay.
And I kind of felt that was okay.
I do not have any issue with that,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Christensen. You get someone to call in something that we need to take care of right away. Emergency. We did have a big snowstorm a couple of years, I think. And up in Pine area, there was some that people couldn't get out for a couple of days. And so there was a lot of calls to District 1 of, I can't get out of my house. And so we have to evaluate those and still making sure it's a public purpose, and that there's a reason that people need to get out for medical or, food or whatever it might be. So, and I don't mind that at all of saying, just identifying an issue to Public Works. We do have to make sure that it's a public purpose and that we're not doing roads and things like that for a specific individual or a minimum
Right.
of individuals.
Well, and, people look at us differently than they do your position and others. So at some level, we're not just policy makers. We're leaders. We set an ideal, an agenda, a thought of a process. These are my goals, and this is my philosophy, and this is how I'm going to work for the people of Gila County. And so as I'm trying to balance that and learn that as I go, I understand I can't make promises about certain things, and so I don't, and all of that. So I think, I don't know if this is a confession, but I'm just saying that's kind of the way I'm handling it, and I just want to make sure that I've never worked in government before, so to be a team player is some more of a challenge to me than others perhaps, because but I do realize we are a team. We have a tremendously capable and good team in Gila County. I'm very proud to be a part of it.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Christensen, absolutely true that you, as the Board of Supervisors, collectively, the three of you, give direction to Gila County, the direction that I take and everybody, because you are the policymakers, that you're going to set the direction. You are the leaders that represent the constituents in each of your districts, but you have to bring that together as a board, and collectively, you do all those things that you described, Supervisor Christensen. So yeah, very much so.
Thank you.
Last thing, I just, as a county, and this isn't, as we look at the things, I've got 4 pages here, front and back 2 pages, of all the things that we do as a county. And there are, sometimes we forget, we look at roads, we look at the sheriff's office, a couple things that are just always out in front of us. Sometimes we forget the things that we are doing that are not as forward and not as up front. Like just on the first page, Community Services has a TANF program where that's temporary assistance for needy families. Have a guest program where that is to provide services to developmentally disabled. I'm not going to go through this whole list, but I just did want to give you a list. It's broken down by what functions they perform. Again, in an accounting world, we are required to identify what the function is of anything that we do, and that is the governmental purpose. And so the function is indicated, but just wanted to make you aware that there is a lot of things that are going on in Gila County. And it's up to us to tell our story about these things, and sometimes we don't get to all the good stories that are going on. And just so wanted to bring that up and bring an awareness to the vast and broad spectrum of services that we provide to the people of Gila County under your direction as the Board of Supervisors. You have control and direction for all of this.
James, thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions on our agenda item, information discussion regarding powers and duties?
No, sir.
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for your time. And I think we've got a great board that, to me, the most important is what you're trying to do for the public, and you are engaged with the public out there trying to find out what we can do as a county. And I respect each of you for that and look forward to working with you to accomplish the things that you have in mind.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, if that does it for today, I will adjourn. Oh, golly, call the public. Sorry about that. I'm looking at a blank screen up in Payson. Did anybody sneak in and not in view in Payson?
No, there's nobody out there.
Nobody but this voice from the corner. Thank you. All right, I see no one here for call to the public. Do we have anyone on YouTube to address the board? Okay. At any time during the meeting pursuant to ARS 3843102K, members of the Board of Supervisors and County Manager may present a brief summary of current events. No action may be taken on information presented. James, you're on if you have anything. Okay, Supervisor Christensen.
Very quickly, just yesterday attended a Republican luncheon. Rim Country Republican Club had a luncheon at the Payson Golf Course where our state senator Wendy Rogers attended, and so that was good and interesting. And I've been invited to speak at the Payson Tea Party meeting tonight at 6, so I'll be doing that. I've been given 30 minutes to talk about myself. I don't know if that's enough time. That's all I have. Thanks.
And they won't throw anything at you if you go a little over, I don't believe. Okay, Supervisor Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on Tuesday, April 20th, I met with Councilwoman Barbara May from San Carlos, Gilson Wash. She came in and her and her assistant and sat down and had a really good conversation with her. They got trash issues out there, and so I'm gonna be working with her and her district on some trash issues. Plus, she brought up the road issues on San Carlos. In the past, prior to me coming in here, we had IGA with the reservation to maintain roads and whatnot. The IGA expired before I came into office. So ever since I've been in office, whenever it came up, I told them, kick out the IGA, let's look at the road issues, yada, yada, yada. We'll take a look at the roads, because in order for our Public Works Department to have anything to do with these roads, it has to meet HERF qualifications. And that's kind of a tough issue out there. And so anyway, she brought it back up. I've dealt with them 2 or 3 times. Homero was with me a time or two, and she brought it back up the other day. One of the things that I'm looking at doing is working with James and our budget, putting a few dollars on a line item that would go to them specifically for roads, but not HERF dollars. And that way they could contract, hire out, rent, whatever they want to do, their own motor grader once in the spring, once in the fall, to blade what roads they're going to blade. And then they just give us a report back on the roads. In the long run, this would work better for them, and it would work as well for us. And so I'm working with her on that and on a cleanup. Actually, there's going to be 3 cleanup days out there in Gilson Wash. And that's going to be May 19th, 20th, and 21st. I've already worked with Kenny Keith on dumpsters and whatnot, so we'll be going forward with that. Also on Wednesday, April 22nd, I was back on the Workforce Board Executive Committee meeting. Good meeting. Their national meeting is coming up. I'm kind of kicking it around whether I even want to go to that one or just attend it virtually. It'll be in D.C., but I'm not sure. I'm still thinking about that. And then on Thursday, April 22nd, I met with a gentleman, and Kathy did as well, up there in Young for the Pleasant Valley admin site, the veteran retreat site. And his name's Larry Johnson. He's from Globe. He's in the Valley. He's worked with Chamber of Commerce. He's worked with veterans. He's worked with a lot of different people. And so we're talking to him about maybe helping us set up the 501c3 program for that admin site and getting all that done. As well, I'm waiting for our assessor's office to come back with the values on those buildings that they assessed here about 3 weeks ago, I guess. I'll be pushing them on that and see if I can get that from them so we can wrap up that lease agreement on that and get that started. Then our big push will be to go on and try and push that bill through Congress and get the actual ownership of that property. So that's going on. Friday, April 23rd, I was on the LPC, the Legislative Policy Committee meeting again, and things are kind of settling down now with the session. It's starting to wind down, and so we probably won't have the scheduled Friday meetings as we've had for the last long time. They'll just hold on. If something comes up, then they'll put it out there, and we'll go ahead and come up on a Zoom meeting and discuss it. And that is it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Klein. Public meetings, again, held my Roosevelt community meeting, and Wendy Rogers was there. She was also at my Tono Basin meeting. So she's spreading herself out around the communities, trying to get involved. Attended a District 2 team meeting. Attended Southern Gila County Community Wildfire Protection Plan meeting. Attended the Gila County Republican Club meeting. Met with Daryl Stubbs regarding AZYP Summer Conference. Attended a RTAC board meeting, Rural Transportation Advocacy Committee. That's a board that I'm on. And we'll attend a CAG, Central Arizona Government Regional Council meeting on Wednesday night. So I'm kind of glad that these meetings are getting back in person. I'm able to get in front of the public. I really enjoy the CAG meeting because the mayor of Globe is also on CAG, and we carpool, so it gives us a couple hours to visit without an informative meeting. And James gets to go with us, and even sometimes Paul Jepson, the city manager. So it's a good conversation, and to stay in contact with the mayor and what's going on, and where we can just have a chance to sit and visit. So anyway, lots of meetings. It's a good thing, and I guess that's all for me. And if it didn't spark anything for anyone else, then now I will. Oh, okay.
One thing
Supervisor Klein.
thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I should have brought up too is we're still in the process of for our youth cruise this summer. So they're able to apply until May 10th. So if you know any kids out there looking for a job this summer, let them know. They can go online and get the application and apply. That's open till May 10th.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's important. Okay, if that's all, I will adjourn today's meeting. Thank you.